Hi there, my name is Hayley Scrivenor and I am the author of Durton. Durton is a small town mystery. It's the story of a young girl named Esther Bianchi who doesn't come home from school one day. It's also the story of the people she leaves behind. So her best friend, a boy who saw Esther on the day she went missing but who's too scared to come forward and tell the police what he knows, the missing girl's mother, as well as the investigating officer, Detective Sergeant Sarah Michaels, who's ultimately the only person who can unpick what's happened in this small, dry country town. Publishing your first novel is something that you dream about for so long that when it actually happens, it's sort of not just surreal, but you want to capture the experience, but it's all happening so fast. So one of the things that's been most amazing about having a book come out has been actually seeing the book in the wild. So that's when it all becomes real. So you know logically that you've published a book, but when you see someone walking past with it, like holding it in their arms, you go, oh, that actually happened. There is a real place that inspired the town of Durton. So of course my book is called Durton because the local kids call their town, which is Durton, D-U-R-T-O-N, Durton, which is very true. In my childhood, I feel like a lot of my friends made up silly nicknames for things. And Durton, if I'm honest, is based on the town where I grew up. So I lived in a town of less than 2,000 people and went to primary school there. So as a young child, I think we left when I was 12 though, so this book is a bit of a love letter to a time and a place that isn't where I live anymore, and I think that's partly why the location feels hopefully potent for people, because it really is this kind of distillation of how I felt about a place when I was a child. I would say that the place that is Durton, so the town of Durton, definitely came to me first when I was writing the book. So one of the very first things I wrote was, before I knew the plot, before I knew that a girl was missing, before I knew anything about this book, I wrote about the children of a small country town coming home from school. And that really is the genesis that became the whole book. You know, I had them coming home, I had them thinking about what they've done that day, and I thought, if they're all thinking about what they've done that day, something's happened. And that's when I knew that Esther Bianchi was missing, and that's when I knew the town would sort of never be the same again. I think Australian landscape is really useful for creating tension because of this sense of physical isolation. I'm here in the UK at the moment, and I've been driving around with my mum actually and my partner in a camper van, and we realised how you're never very far from sort of food or shelter or a place or other people, whereas my experience of growing up in a small country town was very much this sense of physical isolation. And I think for a crime story in particular, that elevates all of that tension that you're trying to bring across by having the characters be physically distant from help, from support, things like that. So Durton features what I like to think of as a Greek chorus. They're the group of children that I mentioned earlier, you know, these children that all live in the town and sort of describe that experience. They were really not just the beginning of the book, but they're threaded through the book for me, because much like a traditional Greek chorus in a traditional Greek play, they'll come out and they'll kind of comment on the action and they'll tell us sort of how to feel or how the town feels. And they're also a really interesting way to foreshadow what's coming. So they're sort of omniscient. They kind of have access to things that they shouldn't know, and that's a really fun position to write from for part of a crime novel. You're preparing the reader for the fact that there are things that they don't know that are going to be shocking when they kind of come along. So they were really my way into the book, and they're also surprisingly one of the things that most readers that I get so much positive feedback on, because I was quite nervous about it. I thought it was quite an unusual point of view, but I'm really glad that it's reached readers in the way that I'd hoped. I think crime fascinates readers, and me in particular, because deep down human beings want to know how to make the right decisions in life. We want to be safe, we want to be loved, we want to do the right thing, and crime really helps us grapple with the fact that there are moments where there is no right decision, or there are moments that we can't control. And I think in the pages of a crime book we can kind of grapple with that reality in a way that feels safe, in a way that allows us to feel that this is a human problem, it's not just a personal problem. And I think there is not just a sense of catharsis, or I don't think we read crime because we're terrible people and we like to watch other people suffer. I think we read crime to feel more connected and to kind of almost to play out difficult experiences from the safety of our own kind of bedroom or armchair or wherever that is that we're reading. I think queer representation is incredibly important in crime, because I think queer representation is incredibly important everywhere. it was sort of baked in for me that my book would have queer characters, partly because, I was writing about the small town where I grew up, and I knew I wanted to write about this feeling that I had that I didn't quite have language for yet, but I knew that this burgeoning sense of who I was wouldn't necessarily be welcome. And I really get to explore that through the character of Lewis in my book. But what's nice is I also get to have a queer character like Detective Sergeant Sarah Michaels, who's the investigating officer. She's good at her job. She is in charge of this investigation. And so I really felt like I got to not just think about the coming out story or think about the, the fear of being maybe a queer child. I got to look at a queer character in the fullness of their life. And that was really important to me, and I think what I love so much about Sarah as a character, she's allowed to be a bit flawed. She's a full kind of person, and that was really important to me, and what I love to read in anything that I read, but especially crime. What is coming next for me is a tightly held secret, partly because I'm a very superstitious writer. I wrote this book as part of a PhD, so I knew that there was a kind of a finish line, and now I've written one book. I feel so excited to kind of tell the next story that I want to tell, and what's astonishing is having written one book, knowing there are readers who care about your writing or that want to see what you'll come up with next. I would say that I'm not returning to characters from this book in my next one, but what I do hear is that people love the depth of my characters, or they love the way that I really go into people in their fullness. And I think that will drive everything that I write from here on out. And while I don't want to give too many hints, I would say it's not another small dry town, but it is a different kind of small community, because I'm endlessly fascinated by the ways that the people around us kind of define us, and that we're kind of pushing back against them. I think that will be something I continue to explore in my writing for a long time. So sorry that it's not more, I don't have more information for you, but I do hope that everything I do will be driven by character and will kind of pull you kicking and screaming through the book in terms of plot. That's the goal I set myself. Thank you so much for watching. Dirt Town is out now. I really hope you enjoy my small town Australian story.